Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay, a podcast focusing on meditation, the near-death experience, and all things spiritual. Hello, this is Jay. My special guest today is Vladimir. Vladimir, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you very much, Jay. I appreciate this opportunity to sit with you for some time.
So, what is your background with meditation?
So, I've been doing guided meditations on my own for quite some time, probably about 5 or so years at this point. And I had some challenging events, shall we say, in life that kind of give you a wake-up call, I suppose, and makes you want to change direction and find answers to questions that maybe you didn't even know you had, perhaps when you were younger, things that you just don't think about. And so I had been introduced to mindfulness and meditation for well, my mom is a practicing Buddhist, so it's been, probably about 30 odd years, but I never thought it really fit into me. Even though it's right under our noses sometimes, certain ways to enhance your experience or enhance your lifestyle, in a positive direction. Sometimes we still don't take it, even though it's there. And so I have my little, hey, make yourself, a little bit more on a smooth path or so. It wasn't anything too negative or anything like that. I don't want to make it sound like it was, such a dramatic event. It really wasn't. It was just, needed some new direction. And so I just began, on my own, plenty of resources, just, on the internet as it is, and then asking my mom, how else? What else is there to do? And, she pointed me in some right directions. My wife as well. My wife is, she's Cambodian, so she's pretty well versed in Buddhism and meditation and so forth as well. And so I had the resources there. So I just decided to follow through on it a little bit more. And then it wasn't until recently, only about 2 years now, that I found the Blue Lotus Meditation and Mindfulness Center here in Brainerd, Minnesota.
So is this like something you do full time now? Is meditation? Teach meditation?
So it's not quite full time at this point. I teach at a university. I teach science at a local university here, and so I'm finding that what I thought I had wanted when I was younger, with that type of academic, career field, it's not exactly what I, anticipated. And that's cool. Things happen in life, you get different perspectives, and that's, how things should be, as we older and get more mature, our viewpoints change, sometimes, and that's a good thing. And so not quite full time. It's mostly during the summertime, because here in Minnesota, you may not be familiar with, but we do get a lot of snow. So there's not a lot of outdoor activities. And the center that I founded is mostly, it's a retreat center. We do host indoor activities, excuse me, as well, for, more one-on-one guided practices. But predominantly during the summertime, people get together. We do our silent retreats, outside. We do a team, 2 individual week-long team mindfulness retreats, or mindfulness day camps, if you choose to call it that. Retreats for couples and so forth, couples only retreats and so forth. So just being our natural setting, which is how I kind of like it. I think back to the days is that you know, 2,500 years ago when Buddhism, you know, first started. You know, not everybody was at a meditation hall. You know, not everybody was, you know, in a permanent structure. And even now, you know, certainly there's the pagodas where the monks stay, but a lot of times they're just out walking around, um, doing their, their good deeds and so forth. And so I also think that being in the society that we are today is kind of taking away from that mindfulness, that experience and that meditation, just the fast pace. And so I try to keep it very natural setting, more, it's very along the lines of, getting back to nature helps you get back to yourself.
Hmm. So, with your science background, were you interested in looking at a lot of the science behind meditation and mindfulness? Because there have been quite a few studies that I've heard about that back up the benefits of meditation and mindfulness.
Oh, absolutely. And that was something that I looked at. To be honest, though, my science background is more in the physical science. It's in geology. So our science is a little bit different than, the psychological side. Although that still didn't, that wasn't an area where I was really interested, nor am I really not interested in just generally looking at the science behind it, to be honest with you. I'm looking at it more of a, just an enlightening experience, or the positivity that kind of just naturally flows with a different lifestyle, something just more holistic. So I know there are a lot of studies, and there's a lot of science behind it, but to me, that's not what I find. That does not answer my questions, the science behind it. There's always going to be, science to support, one idea or one concept. And there'll be science to, kind of, maybe find a different way. But that was really something that I'm trying to kind of not blind myself to, but kind of walk away from. I see that all the time. It's just, I want a different experience, than, what a report says. I see that all the time, like this is all this, these are all these geology reports and all these papers. I see that all the time. I just want something that, is just where I can let go of all that. I don't have to, you know, take that part in. I just like the nature and the relaxation that comes associated with it.
So, like at these retreats, I've heard a lot of meditation retreats are very immersive, where you basically do this for several hours in a day and just become totally immersed with meditation.
And so that's true. And so what I do, so beginning in May, excuse me, so beginning in at the end of May, the last Sunday of every month from May until September, we host free silent meditation retreats. And it is hard, right? One, it's hard to not talk, for 8 or 9 hours to begin with, excuse me. But to kind of break up that just sitting there for 8 hours, 8+ hours or so, I do have different scheduled events. We have a writing meditation, we have a walking meditation, we have a tea or a coffee meditation, a stick meditation, just like a regular old stick, or some type of other natural object, just so you're not just sitting there the whole time, but the whole idea of the getting back to nature is to also explore, so when you're out on a walking meditation, it's a very forested area where our center is. And so there's a lot of wildlife. There's a lot of really pretty vegetation. Raspberries and wild grapes grow, and there's all kinds of animals, and who knows what you may find, and so that's part of the experience. So you're not just sitting there for 8 hours. That's pretty hard to do sometimes, especially with And a lot of times we have people that, this is their first experience with a retreat, and the only thing that's maybe even be prohibitive is just driving there, but there's no cost associated with it. You can just show up and so that kind of opens the door, for people. And it's, it can be hard for someone who has never experienced it. And, you're free to come and go as you like, it's not, and I think the freeness of it, the no charge to it is much more inviting, because people can come and go without feeling like, man, I just paid $100 for a silent retreat. I better stay for 8 hours, and but no, I don't, that's not what it's about. It's about connecting with yourself. And I think that low cost ceiling, allows people to enjoy it and to experience it for the first time. And that's a really wonderful experience.
So what is a walking meditation like? Because I've heard about them. I've never done a walking meditation.
So you can do a walking meditation anywhere. You could do a walking meditation not only in the, at one of our retreats, but I mean, you could do it in the grocery store. It is really just walking and looking and observing where you are. If you're at in the forest, maybe a little chipmunk, excuse me, maybe a little chipmunk runs by. Maybe he stops and looks at you for, a few seconds, or maybe you walk by, some fragrant flowers. But if you're walking in a grocery store, look at the colors. Things are designed, to get your attention, right? That's how you buy things. Look at them. Look at the packaging. Think about the story of how that box of cereal even got on the shelf. It didn't just come there, but there's a story associated with it. The retail clerk had to put it on the shelf. Before he got it, or before they got it, it came back from receiving. So how did it get to receiving? A truck driver had to bring it in. So you can follow that whole story back, with anything, not just the grocery store. But that's what a walking meditation is being observant, being aware of where you are. Maybe there's, maybe a little child is, having an exciting day 2 aisles over, and you can hear him, and you can, just relish that moment, whatever it is, because whatever that moment is, it will never happen again. And so that's part of being, a walking meditation, just trying to immerse yourself where you are.
And that goes to like mindfulness, where you're observing the world around you, seeing, experiencing, and trying to do it without judgment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You may hear that little child screaming, 2 aisles away. Don't judge him. He's having his day, right? He's getting his message across one way or the other. And his parents are having their message received one way or the other. So yeah, it is. It's non-judgmental awareness of where you are. Absolutely.
Well, is that because I think a lot of people, when we think of meditation, we think of it as strictly when you sit, you close your eyes for however long, and that's your meditation. But you can broaden your understanding of meditation and mindfulness by doing things like a walking meditation or observing things around you.
Yeah. So another good in writing meditation is another. A lot of times people keep journals, but think about the paper that you're writing on. Think about your penmanship. Not too many people do that these days. A lot of people type. But if you do even a journaling meditation or a writing meditation, there's a lot of area for exploration. Look at the loop of your L. Look at the T's as you cross it. Did you dot your I's? How do you dot your I's? Do you make the little lollipops, or do you just do a little dot, or maybe you do the little ovals? So a lot of little things that you can observe. Writing meditation is a fun one too, because that allows you to also reflect, on maybe your day, or a particular instance that, that happened, um, throughout that, portion of your life. Yeah.
Well, I guess a tea meditation is probably similar in the sense you sit down, you observe drinking the tea. Is it hot? Does it have a flavor? Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You can let it sit there on your tongue for a little bit, enjoy it as it, goes down your throat. Do the tastes change, right? From the front of your tongue to the side of your tongue to the back of your tongue. Is there an aftertaste, or so forth? Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, or the aroma, right? The aroma, the temperature of the cup, and so forth. So yeah, absolutely. A lot of things you can bring that what you would not think of as meditation, you can bring it into a meditation. So you're right. We think of meditation just sitting there and legs crossed and so forth. But yeah, any activity, talking, right? Choosing your words carefully, right? And with kindness and understanding towards someone else. So yeah, absolutely.
So we were talking about vipassana meditation, which is sort of the root of where mindfulness came from. And it's like an ancient practice. Is there any differences between mindfulness and the original vipassana meditation?
It's a part of it. There's not, it's almost like a heads and a tails in some sense, right? It's still part of that same coin, although they're not opposite. Mindfulness and, that meditation is that particular style of meditation. They're not opposites. They're really joined together, because there's other meditations too, where, maybe you just focus on an object. Maybe you have a dot on the wall, and you just bring your attention to that little dot on the wall. But with ours is more focused on the emotions that, like you correctly identified, the non-judgmental awareness of those emotions. And that's what mindfulness is. It's that awareness as well. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So is your primary focus on just mindfulness, or do you have other meditation techniques that you do at your center?
No, it's just that. Yeah, that's the only one. Just on the emotional aspect. Now we do have different sanghas that meet for different purposes. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. And so we do have different sanghas that meet, one for veterans, for teens, for a healing sangha, excuse me, for trauma survivors, LGBTQ community, different sanghas for different groups of people who may feel comfortable. And that's where we focus on mindfulness and how they can incorporate mindfulness, to, in a setting that may be more comfortable, for them.
Do you get invited into different groups within your community to go in and give a lecture or a talk about meditation?
That's good. I've had a couple. I've had two. I had one with a private, they were a defense contractor, believe it or not, here in Minneapolis. And I went to one of their, they had a corporate retreat. And so I was invited to go over and speak with them for a moment. And then actually the Minnesota Public Defender's Office, I did one with them as well, did some meditations with them. So yeah, on occasion.
Yeah, I know a lot of different groups have started to get into meditation. I've read about different programs in school where they're sort of replacing, in some cases, detention with like a brief meditation, and they're seeing positive results and better behavior, things like that.
And that's a good point that you bring up, because if we think about even when you and I went to school, we were never taught about with the mindfulness. Now they've kind of branded it to the SEL, social emotional learning, and mindfulness is certainly a part of that. But that was something that, I mean, I know I was never taught, how to, you know, conflict resolution, or dealing with complex emotions, especially in high school, may start, or even in middle school, I suppose, you start dealing with, boyfriends and girlfriends, and mom and dad, on a different type of relationship. And so a lot of times what could go on at home or on the outside of school, um, can very well present itself in school, and so sometimes when we have a student acting out, sometimes the problem is not the problem, right? It's something else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. I was glad to hear that. I've heard some reports, and I've actually read some articles, where they have talked about that, where they have introduced mindfulness into school and have seen some really good results. Because it's, school isn't just about, reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? It's developing a good citizen, somebody who with an openness and a caring towards others as well.
Well, I heard a TED talk too, where I think the person came from a psychologist's background, and he was describing this technique called willfulness, and everything he said sounded pretty much like what mindfulness teaches. They just had a different term called willfulness. So I wonder if it's sort of being incorporated into other things, just with different names.
I'm sure it is. There's like 500 species of apples, right? And they're still apples. So there's probably a lot of different names that they could. I know, right? Minnesota has a lot of apples, so they grow. So that's why. But no, I'm sure that's absolutely correct. There's a lot of overlap, and as long as it's being taught, and in practice, and people are receiving a benefit out of it, the name isn't really important. It's are they developing those skills to treat themselves kindly, which in turn, treating yourself kindly, which in turn you would inevitably treat someone else with kindness as well.
Mm-hmm. So what does kindness in terms of mindfulness look like? Do you try to focus on kind thoughts towards yourself, towards others, and just sort of move your energy that way?
So with kindness, we allow ourselves mistakes, right? We don't have to focus on perfection, right? We understand that, what, today may not be a good day. Something may happen at work, or, there may be a traffic jam and I arrive to, my destination late or something like that. Instead of beating ourselves up, I should have left 15 minutes earlier, or, whatever the case is, we allow ourselves kindness, or, maybe I shouldn't have spent that extra $50 at the movie theater, going to go see a new movie. And now I'm, stuck until next week. A lot of things can happen, but allowing ourselves that freedom to make mistakes, that's a really good way to start that kindness towards ourselves, which does inevitably, go towards, what, if I can make a mistake, so can you. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm. But it's sort of like there's forgiveness for yourself, and sort of just being maybe a little more easygoing, go with the flow a little more.
It's very much kind of go with the flow. If we think about everything in our lives that we try to control, that would really be hard. That would really be hard. So there's a good saying that was kind of introduced to me. You control what you control and let go what you can't, right? So, for example, if I were studying for a test, right, what could I control? I can control the amount of effort I put in on, to study for the test. I could control um, the type of preparation, am I practicing questions? Am I doing vocabulary words, whatever? So those would be efforts that I could control. But what could I not control? I certainly could not control the questions that you give me or that are presented on that test. So I don't worry about those. I can only focus on what am I able to do to make it the best that I can. So yeah, it is kind of just going with the flow a little bit. What happens, happens. And it's not that negative things won't happen, right? People will get sick, people may lose their jobs, but at the same time, people will recover and people will find new jobs at the same time. There's a lot of things that kind of just, when we experience negativity, we look at it with the lens of something immediate, like it's happening right now. This is immediately negative. When 2 or 3 days later, you may find it turns out to be a nice little positive. Suppose you find out, oh man, I wasn't able to get those concert tickets. They sold out, going to go see Paul McCartney, right? He's going back on tour, but they sold out of all his tickets, right? But suppose you find out there was a freak storm and you weren't going to be able to make it, the airlines had to cancel the flights or something like that. And you would have lost out, so yeah, I didn't get my tickets to go see Macca, right? Paul McCartney. I didn't get to see my tickets to go see Paul McCartney, but look what could have happened. I would have missed it anyway because of an airline thing. Who knows? So we always tend to look at the negative right immediately, right at that immediate time, right in front of us. When give it some time. Very seldom are really negative. Do a lot of really negative things happen to us that are like significantly negative. They happen, but not always.
Mm-hmm. So is there a particular group that you like to work with especially?
Not particularly. I like everybody, so anybody who wants to come talk or, just sit with me or learn, yeah, you're all welcome. Anybody. I don't have any particular favorites of groups of people. I like people. I like everybody. I really do. I know you probably hear, some people say that a lot, but I do like everybody. I don't, and if somebody's having a bad day, I like to listen, and let's figure out why, what really happened. Why were you having a bad day? Is it really so bad? Waking up is the best thing that you could ever do. And if you're waking up every morning, it's automatically a good day, no matter what happens, because you have opportunity.
Well, so much of life comes down to your perspective on it. Mm-hmm. And that's what you sort of bring in terms of positive or negative, is how you perceive it.
Yeah. Yeah. Our perceptions they can bind you, and they can give you or force you to see people or events through a certain lens. And that lens is not always accurate, right? You're seeing, what's going on to one person. You're seeing it through your perspective. You're not seeing it through somebody else's perspective. And that's where that kindness comes in that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. If I know that I can have a bad day, right? Somebody else can too. And so once we start having that kindness to ourselves, then we can start understanding someone else's perspective sometimes. And so that kind of removes that lens, that maybe that narrow focus of that little light that we can see, maybe broadens it up a little bit more. And so we can have a more understanding of more compassion, more empathy towards someone else. So, yeah.
How long do you meditate in a given day usually? Like in terms of actually sitting and closing your eyes, meditating?
Just 30 minutes every morning from about 6 to 6:30 or so, give or take. I'm up in there, before everybody gets up in the house and everything. That's my quiet time. But then again, throughout the day, mindful conversation, what you and I are doing right now, later on, mindful typing, because my mindful writing, shall we say, is still not there with my penmanship. So it's mindful typing for me, but that's okay. So, some days maybe twice a day for another half an hour, but I try to keep it at, I'm very diligent about at least every morning, depending on my schedule and so forth. But, throughout the activities throughout the day, I do try to bring that awareness too, with the tea meditation, and so forth, or maybe an afternoon coffee or something like that.
Have you basically tried to make every moment of your life meditative then, where you're focused? I mean, obviously you probably get distracted like everybody else, but you try to do that?
Yeah. I do try to do that. And sometimes I catch myself when I'm not. Driving is a good one, is a good example too. Think about, how many times do we drive and say, man, what did I do during that drive? Like, I don't remember anything. It's just like you're on autopilot. And so sometimes I will catch myself throughout the day, like, man, am I really paying attention to what's going on? Am I really listening to the other person, and their conversation? So I do. I mean, I do my best effort, but it's not 100%.
Mm-hmm. So do you try to, when you see other people, because it's so easy when you go on like Facebook to get very negative, and whether you think what you're saying is true or not, it takes you in a negative place and it tends to bring you down. So it's like, I've kind of tried to move away from judgments where, like you say, oh, this person's an idiot or this person's this or that. I just try to focus more on the positive of love and compassion, and going to transform the world more through that than fighting with each other.
Yeah, and that's really true. And I do have some friends that are posting posts, comments like that. But honestly, I don't reply. I just don't allow myself to get involved in that. One, it's typing and you're not really hearing somebody else. You're only getting a sentence or two, and people are much more in depth, than one or two sentences. And so and it's not, you're not going to change somebody else's mind, in a sentence or two. It really takes, a decent conversation. So I really don't get involved, in those types of posts. And quite, most of my friends, I can always tell when my 30-day snooze is up on their posts, because I start seeing their stuff pop up. I'm like, you're still posting all that stuff, 30-day snooze again. So.
So you were hosted in a magazine, weren't you, recently?
Yeah. So Voyage, Minnesota. So apparently somebody nominated us to, participate in a little interview, and we took part in that, and it was nice. It was nice to be recognized. I don't know who it was. I don't know who found us, or what the circumstances were. But if you're listening to this, maybe you are. I sincerely appreciate you and thank you for nominating us, for that interview. So yeah, it was a nice interview process.
What's for meditation for you? Does it have a spiritual component to it? Because I know you said that your mom was Buddhist, wasn't she? And do you have a spiritual component to it, or is it just more of a mental health?
It's on the both side. There is a spiritual component to it. Buddhism by itself is, it's not atheistic. It's more agnostic on that side. It doesn't discount, deities or anything. When you talk, when Buddha himself was going through his enlightenment process, he met other gods, and so forth. One of the most identifiable ones is Mara, right? Who was trying to tempt him at the very end. Mara was trying to tempt him, with his daughters and riches and everything like that. And, he let it go. So, but there's mindfulness and Buddhism in that sense are, it's almost like the psychology of like 2,500 years ago, being okay with yourself and understanding that, bad things are going to happen, and so are good things, and so are neutral things. And so the spiritual component of it is, I feel good about myself, and that's very spiritual. I have that connection with you or the dogs or the cats and the birds, and I feel that connection. So there's a spiritual component to that. If somebody chooses to take it, to God himself, or that's perfectly fine. It's completely open to that. The whole thing is kindness, and awareness. So yeah. So I do have that spiritual connection in that sense. So yes.
Well, yeah, it seems like there was a legend of Jesus going to Tibet and India and the surrounding areas during his silent years. And when you look at the Gospels, there's so much parallel between what Jesus taught and his parables. They have similarities to what you see in Buddhism. I'm kind of surprised, like you were just describing about Buddha being tempted by a god. It sounds very similar to Jesus when he was tempted by Satan for 40 days. I see some parallels there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's somebody's always trying to be tempted, right? And to better ourselves, whatever it is, sometimes it's, or I would probably say all the time, right? It's not giving into that temptation, right? It's maintaining the wholesomeness of yourself, right? It's not, usually for temptation, it's for personal gain, or, some immediate type of reward, so that immediacy is not always beneficial for us. So it's certainly, and during Jesus's lost year, I don't know if they're lost years, but those years when he was, I guess the Australians would say going walkabout, right? So yeah.
So, are you working on any projects right now related to meditation?
I am. Yeah. Well, so actually, I've got a new program I'm kind of working on right now. I have one out there right now called Resiliency Plus, and it's a resiliency course that helps. Resiliency is just the ability to, survive through a challenging time. I put the little plus on there because I don't think survival is necessarily, that's like the base level. How can we thrive? And again, a lot of it's perspective. So a new one I have, kind of working on right now. We'll talk about it in a little bit. It's a cool name. It took me a while to come up with, like, how can I come up with a fun name, to come up with that. It's kind of relevant. But yeah, I'll have something else coming out. A new program.
That's good. Well, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Oh, this was absolutely delightful. So thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad I saw it. I really am.
So where can people reach you? Do you have a website, Facebook page, things like that?
So both. Yeah. So our website is www, right? They all start with www, right? But Blue Lotus meditation.us. And then directly from there, all the social links, emails and so forth are there. But Instagram, YouTube, Facebook as well.